So to begin my talk, I would like to start with a little experiment. Can you help me with that? I want you to think of your favorite food, the one you can't live without. Okay, that's a little cruel. Let's do top 5. Top 5 favorite foods, okay? Got it? Now, I want you to think of your identity and your culture. Where are you from? Try to sum it up in one word. So I would say, I'm Indian. Do we have that? Now let's put the two together. Do the top 5 foods that you've listed as your favorite, are they all from the culture that you call your own? Do they match? Do they not? Raise your hand if they don't all match. Pretty much everyone. Okay, I cheated a little bit. I could not cut my list down to 5, but a lot of my favorite foods are far from my own culture. Cultural appreciation. 2 very powerful words that we hear a lot in diversity, equity, inclusion nowadays that push for and drive the exchange and appreciation of different cultures and people. However, even though we hear this very recently now, it's a concept that's been omnipresent in a lot of our lives, especially growing up in this region. We've all been raised in a melting pot of cultures, and they've shaped who we are today, from our values, our lifestyles, and our preferences. In society, we see this a lot in architecture, in language, in relationships, in fashion, and of course, in food. Which brings me back to my question that I asked at the beginning of the talk. One of the ways that I first had the opportunity to interact with cultures far from my own was actually through food. Trying new and distant flavors, dishes, and ingredients was something I really enjoyed as a kid. And whenever we visited a new place, we always made it a point to try the local cuisine, not just because it's absolutely delicious, but because it provides unique insight into the context and the culture of where you're at. Now, I really, really appreciate the intersection between my love for food and the culture that I've been exposed to. And this is something that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. However, I've recently found a new way to understand the intersection between cultural appreciation and food, and it has a lot to do with our global food waste crisis. Sustainable Development Goal 12.3 aims to reduce food waste per capita, so per person, by 50% before 2030. We're 6 years away, it's 2024, and although there's been some fantastic individual progress from countries, as a global team, we're not doing so well. In fact, we've moved in the opposite direction. We waste 30% of our food from the time it is harvested to when we chuck it in the trash after a meal. This equates to about 1.3 billion tons per year at a value of around $1 trillion US. Apart from the major ecological impact this has on our lands and our oceans, by over-purchasing and then throwing away perfectly good food, we are exacerbating the pre-existing issues of hunger and food insecurity. 10% of the world goes to bed hungry every single day. And our supply chains are under extreme stress to try to meet our demand and allocate food to those who need it most. If we're thinking about person to person, each of us waste an average of 120 kilograms of food a year, 60% of which is household food waste. So this is the food that you waste in your kitchens, and it's the food that you waste on your dining tables. Fortunately, most of this is actually avoidable. So, if we want to reduce food waste, alleviate food insecurity, and protect our planet, a great way to start is in our own homes by developing sustainable consumption habits. Over the past 2 years, I've been researching ways to reduce food waste locally here in Singapore, and my investigation took me somewhere unexpected, to conversations about ancient and distant cultures and traditions. I really enjoyed learning about the ways my ancestors in different communities efficiently and respectfully managed their resources, making the most of every dollar and every grain. There's an idea to be shared here, which is on the slide behind me, and that's the idea of understanding the value of cultural appreciation through the lens of sustainability. By learning about what people across time and across oceans have done to live sustainably, we too can adopt sustainable consumption habits to reduce our food waste, and this can inspire us to share these learnings with one another, which I think is a beautiful thing. So, let's begin. If we want to reduce our food waste before 2030, there are 3 main phases we have to consider. This is the most important part of my talk. Are you ready? The 3 phases are consumption, preservation, and disposal. Let's go through each of them one by one. So, consumption. How do we ensure that we only purchase and consume what we need? Remember, preventative measures are the best solutions because they A, allow you to save money, which is always great, and B, allows the food to be allocated to those who actually need it most at the time. The crux of our overconsumption problem comes from a lack of conscious consumerism, or just taking what we want without actively considering what we have the capacity for. As such, ancient cultures over centuries have started traditions and customs that encourage you to actively register what you are taking. In many places in East Asia, specifically China and Japan, for example, there's a practice of eating in a communal style with small plates, much, much smaller than their Western counterparts. The purpose of this was to instill good health and avoid overeating, but its effect is that you have to actively decide how hungry you are after each serving. Apart from its health benefits, this solution then allows you to avoid piling heaps and heaps of delicious food just for it to get wasted after. I've tried this myself, it really does work. Another major solution to consider is the adoption of a plant-based diet. Ancient Indians and even Indians today in many parts of the country still follow this, where a lot of their diet is heavy in plants and vegetation. And this is to protect their environment, to promote good health, but also to ensure that they have the most efficient form of energy in their diet. Ecology pyramids show us that producers, like your plants, your fruit and veg, are much more energy efficient than your consumers, so your meat products. So, by producing and distributing and consuming more plants, you're protecting the environment and you have more energy efficiency in your diet. Okay, let's go to phase 2, preservation. How do we make the most of the food that we have and extend its life until we can finish it? This is especially important for countries or cold countries that have seasonal vegetation, where you get a lot in one period and little to none in another period. Before we even begin to answer this question, I think it's useful to understand what kinds of food we waste the most. Now, obviously this differs from region to region and from cuisine to cuisine, but globally speaking, our top 3 would be produce, so fresh fruit and veg, grain, predominantly bread, and then third, meat, both cooked and uncooked. So let's tackle each one of these and see what people around the world have done to solve this issue. Now, can you tell me what's on the top left corner? Louder? Okay, what about the right? Marmalade, that's correct. And now in the middle? That's correct. Marmalade, pickles, fermented vegetables, jams, and jellies are part of a group that we call preserves. And as the name suggests, allows us to preserve our fruit and veg for a very, very long time. The Koreans have their wide selection of delicious kimchi made from cabbage, radish, onions, pear, cucumbers, bean sprouts, you name it. South Asians have spicy achar made from seasonal fruit and veg. The Germans have sauerkraut, and many cultures all over the world have their own version of their traditional pickle or fermented vegetable. And the best part, you can do it yourself at home. Just take the excess fruit and veg of your choice, put it in vinegar or lemon juice, something acidic, salt, and spices, and seal in an airtight container. The techniques differ from region to region, but the concept is the same. And now, the food that you would have disposed of because you could not finish it in time will last you from weeks to months to years and taste delicious in soups, stews, sandwiches, you name it. It's a great solution, I highly recommend it. Another great way to preserve your excess fruit and veg is through jams, marmalades, and jellies, because they actually allow you to use parts of the fruit that you don't normally eat, like the orange peel. Scottish marmalade is a famous example, and there's a bunch of cultures in the region of the Balkan and the Mediterranean who create their own jam from watermelon rinds called gliko. Now onto our grain. If you have stale bread on your counter in the back of your fridge, this one's for you. Many cultures over years and years have perfected the art of taking stale, seemingly unconsumable bread and making it their star ingredient, and this creativity is seen all over Europe. Mijas is a Spanish and Portuguese dish that uses stale breadcrumbs or rye bread and meat. Zemlovka is a bread pudding from the Czech Republic, and the Dutch have their own version of French toast called wentelteefjes. Additionally, you can try making Danish beer and bread porridge called oliebrol. What this recipes taught me is the idea of taking what you have and creating something delicious out of it, which I think is an important value to instill if we really want to reduce our food waste before 2030. Finally, onto our meat. Now, if you have meat and you don't know what to do with it, your friends across the globe have got you. This is a great opportunity to try new recipes and experiment in the kitchen. You can try arroz con pollo or caldo de res, which are 2 recipes from Latin America, which use both cooked and uncooked beef and chicken and vegetables to create amazing rice dishes and soups. In the consumption section, we've only talked about a few of the many ways to preserve and make the most of the food in our fridge. The way I learned these, and I had the opportunity to gain them, is through conversations. So I implore you that, like me, have those conversations. Talk to your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors, your friends. Learn about what they do in their homes and take this opportunity to try something new. We have finally arrived at phase 3, disposal. When we do need to throw food away, because obviously we do have some unconsumable food, how do we minimize our ecological footprint? One commonality I saw between very old and very culturally rich civilizations was using natural resources as much as possible. For example, leaves. Leaves have been used for centuries to package and steam foods like rice, as well as dispose of them because they can be wrapped up and then composted to create new soil. All over the world, you see examples of this. In India, Indonesia, and Malaysia, pandan and banana leaves are often used for their texture and also for the aroma and color they impart onto food. In Ghana, plantain is often used because of its texture and its stability. In Mexico and in the Mesoamerican region, tamales is a dish which is made from corn husks. And in the Mediterranean and Middle East, in countries like Turkey, dolmas is a group of food which is stuffed in grape leaves. A global, sustainable consumer culture starts with individuals and individual household responsibility. We've barely scratched the surface on ways to reduce our food waste and appreciate different cultures, and there's so much more to learn. I'm excited about learning about new cultures as I continue my exploration into food waste and sustainable living, and I hope this talk today empowered you to do some exploring of your own. As we aim to solve the biggest problem of our present and our future, let's not forget about our past. Let's unite together to stand against environmental destruction and protect our planet, remembering our roots and contributing something unique to the solution. Thank you.